کر لوں میں ادھر پڑھ لوں.
درود پڑھ دے بلند آواز سے. اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وجل فرجہم. جب حر کا گناہ شاہ امم نے بخشا، جب حر کا گناہ شاہ امم نے بخشا، قطرے کو شرف بحر کرم نے بخشا، قطرے کو شرف بحر کرم نے بخشا، گردوں سے ندائی کے اے پیارے حسین، گردوں سے ندائی کے اے پیارے حسین، بخشا جسے تو نے اسے ہم نے بخشا، جب حر کا گناہ. درود پڑھنے بلند آواز.
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وجل فرجہم.
درود پڑھنے بعد سے بنے. اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرج. جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، وہ مراتب ہیں علی کے مصطفیٰ کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، کیسی ایزان زکی ہم مرتے مرتے خوش ہیں، کیسی ایزان ذاکی، ہم مرتے مرتے خوش ہیں، اپنا دم نکلا کیا مشکل کشا کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، آتے ہی ہے در کو یوں چپ ہو گئے کیوں اے مولا، آتے ہی ہے در کے یوں چپ ہو گئے کیوں اے مولا، اب نہیں کچھ بولتے شیر خدا کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، اپنا بندہ دیکھ ہم دونوں میں کہتا ہے کسے، اپنا بندہ دیکھ ہم دونوں میں کہتا ہے کسے، اے نصیریا چلیں تیرے خدا کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، یہ بھی شعر دیکھیے، بھیج دے دوزخ میں یا جنت میں جو کچھ حشر ہو، بندہ حیدر ہوں کہہ دوں گا خدا کے سامنے، بندہ حیدر ہوں کہہ دوں گا خدا کے سامنے، شمر سے کہتی تھی زینب چھین مت چادر میری، کیا کہے گا حشر میں تو مصطفیٰ کے سامنے، مل کے چہرے پر لہو اصغر کا کہتے تھے اسے، میں اسی صورت سے جاؤں گا خدا کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد کے خدا کے سامنے، وہ مراتب ہیں علی کے مصطفیٰ کے سامنے، جو مراتب ہیں محمد۔ فاتحہ۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن
جس دم سنی امام امم نے صدائے حر جس دم سنی امام امم نے صدائے حر سینے پہ ہاتھ مار کے چلائے ہائے رو کر کہا رفیقوں سے دیکھی وفائے فرش ازا حرم نے بچھائی برائے فرش ازا برم نے بچھائی برائے کھینچی جو شین آہا دل بے قرار سے نکلی تڑپ کے فاطمہ زہرا مزار سے نکلی تڑپ کے فاطمہ زہرا مزار سے دوڑے ادھر سے زان کی طرف یدے آئے نجف سے حیدر صفدر بچشم آواز دی نبی نے کہ حر کو لیے جس وقت پہنچے شاہ تو وہ توڑتا تھا جس وقت پہنچے شاہ تو وہ توڑتا تھا سر کاٹنے کی فکر میں جو تھے وہ ہٹ گئے مہمان اپنے دوڑ کے حضرت لپٹ گئے مہمان سے اپنے دوڑ کے حضرت لپٹ گئے زانوں پہ رکھ لیا سرے حر اور یہ کہا بھائی حسین آیا ہے ہوش میں ذرا آنکھیں قدم پہ مل کے یہ بولا وہ باوفا مولا ہزار جان سے میں آپ پر فدا مولا ہزار جان سے میں آپ پر فدا جن کے لیے زمین پہ ملک سر جھکاتے ہیں وہ لوگ خلد سے میرے لینے کو آتے ہیں وہ لوگ خلد سے میرے لینے کو آتے ہیں زانوں پہ سر ہے آپ کے یا شاہ بیر و بر محبوب کبریا ہے شیر حق ادھر ہے کون یہ معظمہ پہلو میں نوحگر شہ نے کہا کہ روتی ہے اماں برہن سر شہ نے کہا کہ روتی ہے اماں برہن سر تو حشر تک امام دو عالم کے ساتھ ہے ماتم تیرا حسین کے ماتم سن کے غیر ہو گیا
اس دم جری کہا
زانو
شاہدی پہ کیا حر نے انتقال
خیمے کے در پہ لاش کو لایا علی
کالا
سب بیویوں نے کھول دیے
اپنے سر کے بال
سب بیویوں نے کھول دیے
اپنے سر کے بال
زینب روئی شیخ کے فدائی کے واسطے جیسے بہن تڑپتی ہے بھائی
کے واسطے
جیسے بہن تڑپتی ہے بھائی کے واسطے جس دم سنی امام نے تمہارا سے دعا
من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين صلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Yesterday we began speaking about the topic of how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, is both a warner and a bringer of good tidings. And we also explained how the same type of action was taken out by Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam during the whole event of Karbala, how he continually warned the opposite side of the outcome of their actions, and how within the camp of the Imam himself you saw that they had a very firm grasp of the good news that awaited them for their stance. And what we understood from this dual role of Bashir and Nadhir is that they both have purposes. Nadhir is to set parameters and boundaries, to inform us of what the consequences of a certain trajectory is, to inform us that there is a punishment, to inform us that there is accountability, because perhaps if we are distracted in the world, this would not be something in the forefront of our minds. It would take us a very long time to develop the intellectual maturity to realize that the world has a purpose, that the world is moving on a trajectory, and that the human being has something to do here. There are so many distractions that perhaps might take us away from this kind of deep understanding. So the prophets come and they warn us and they tell us that this is a possibility. You as a human being, because you have your own agency and because you only have one life, you have to take this message on board. And then conversely as well, we looked specifically at an ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنَ بِالْغَيْبِ. He says that you will only be able to warn those people who follow the dhikr or the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fear Allah in private. Now for these people, once they have digested this message, once they have been warned of this message, and once they keep that warning in mind such that it keeps them on the trajectory, then فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ. Then give them good news. Okay, you've heeded the warning. Now what awaits for you now that you've decided to take a different trajectory from the one that leads to perdition? Now take the good news of forgiveness. Meaning that, yes, your messy road along the way, Allah will forgive. Your main trajectory is going towards the right direction. Not only that, an ajr, a deserved wage for what you do. And we explained this framing of a deserved wage. And I said that there are other expressions as well. One that you're all very familiar with is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about giving charity. How does He frame this? He says, who will give Allah a goodly loan so that He can increase it manifoldly? Okay? When you give your wealth, when you give your time, when you give your effort, sometimes when you give your smile, your salam, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a charitable thing, as something to bring the delight into the heart of another believer. Okay? This is something that Allah takes and He multiplies. Not once, not twice. He just says, ad'afan kathira. Many, many, many times. Let's not count how many. And of course, that's linked to the intention. The purer the intention of the action, as we know, the more effective that action happens to be. But let's examine that for a minute. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who will give him a loan? Who owns something in the first place to loan it to God? And is God in need of taking out a loan? Many of us, we would never dream of taking a debt if we didn't have to. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need your money. He doesn't need your time. He doesn't need your efforts. He doesn't need your smiles. He doesn't need your salams. But He gives you the ability for all of these things, and then He makes it into a transaction. You are the one who is the provider of the loan. You are the one giving here. You are the one that now has a right to a return. Because when you give a loan, you get it back with a return. So you now have a right to a return. And Allah makes the contract. Us, when we give a loan, interest rate base plus X. Yeah? Or whatever, if we don't want to use interest, certain amount should come back. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it on His own terms, in a way that we cannot deal between human beings, in a way that only Allah can deal with us. So He frames that as a loan that we give to Him, and He gives back manifold. Again, like the child who you give them pocket money, and then you say, can you loan me your pocket money and I will times it by 10. And your child says, no, sorry, I can't give it to you. Your child, when they realize the result of that lending, that they will get 10 times, many children will not say no. They will jump at the chance. If you give them £1, they get £10. Right? If you give them £10, they get £100. Okay? So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we were talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is dealing with us. There is a merciful face that is facing us. There is a loving face that is facing us. There is this transaction that makes no sense. that is facing us. And this is all part of the good news. And we spoke about how the good news is about the hereafter, but how to bring that into our day-to-day, how to bring that into our normalcy. That the comfort of the hereafter is something that can be experienced in the here and now. You know that when you are tested and you go through trials in life, that this is not without purpose. This is not without reward. This is not without recompense. And you also know that not only is it something that is experienced in the next world, when you have that attitude, you begin to feel the effects within this world. You feel a sense of calm. You feel a sense of pleasure and happiness with what you're going through despite the difficulty. It is okay for us to feel the weight of the difficulty and at the same time be able to frame that within the understanding that overall this is something that is good for us. So we saw how to bring the benefit into our space and the here and now by understanding the effect on the soul of a certain type of attitude. So in this lecture today, I want to expand more on the concept of the hereafter. The hereafter, as you all know, is of the three most important principles to make a person a Muslim. It is one of the three. So we have Tawheed, we have the attestation of the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have belief in the hereafter. Okay, these are the three parameters which would make someone enter the fold of Islam. Then of course, for various sects, we have additional beliefs that are super added on top of that. But this shows the cornerstone and the key. Similarly, we see in the Holy Quran that many times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala links believing in Him and in the Day of Judgment. They believe in Allah and the Day of Judgment. They're brought together as a twin, as something that follows on from the other. Now, why is this the case? Because if we look at the Quranic trajectory, what the Quran asks us to do, it invites us to reflect. It tells us, think about the bounties that are around you. Think about the sun, think about the moon, think about the grass, think about the animals, think about the water cycle. Look at all of these things. And when you look at all of these things, do you think that they're just happening by the by and they came out of nowhere? Or is it that there is a purposeful, intelligent, wise, knowledgeable hand behind it? And as a person realizes that for this to be just a random situation where all of this perfection is brought into place, since that seems to be something that is very unlikely, because we would not expect this to happen, and we would not even entertain the possibility of this happening in any other sphere. For example, I'm holding an iPad. If I dismantled this iPad and I put it in a tight box, and then I shook that box very hard, how many would expect a fully formed and assembled iPad to emerge from my shaken box? It would be, you would have to be a little bit, sideways to think that that's how you create an iPad. An iPad needs a lot of concentration, parts need to be put in the right place, and so on and so forth. Well, even if I shook it for millions and millions of years, it's not really a convincing way to create an iPad. And an iPad is certainly not as complex as the biological systems that we see in the universe. So for someone to hedge their bets on chance, you have to hedge your bets on it. So when a person thinks about that, and then they think about, no, maybe if we take another view and we say there's an intelligent being that put it together, that makes more sense. Even when I talk about this iPad, I said if I dismantle this iPad and then call an Apple technician to put it together, that makes a lot more sense for this then to be repaired. Okay? So once we realize that there is a purposeful hand, we realize that the creation and the order within the universe must have a purpose. It must have a goal. All this complexity is not for naught. For it to be for nothing would again be a confusing situation, where we see so much injustice in the world that we live in, so much difficulty in the world that we live in, so much suffering in the world that we live in. And this is why many people have brought up the issue of the problem of evil, saying that if God is a loving God, then why is there evil and suffering in the world? And this problem only makes sense and can only be answered when you think about a hereafter, when there is something that comes afterwards, when whatever plays out in this world has an ending. And this is why we have the ending of Yawm al-Qiyamah, the time where everybody comes back, everything is accounted for, everything is sorted out, and then the main purpose is fulfilled, which is that people are categorized into their correct categories and they continue to live a life of bliss or a life of perdition in the next world. So the understanding of the hereafter is of such importance that it is one of those things that completely revolutionizes the way a person thinks and navigates. When they come to the world and when they face the world not only with one eye looking at the material world, but with two. Looking at what happens in the material world, but understanding that all of this has a purpose, all of this has a goal, all of this has a trajectory, and that there is a hereafter in which we will see the completion of all of those things. And like I said to you in the last lecture, the hereafter, on the one hand, we can think of it in terms of time, what happens later, and on the other hand is what happens within our very souls. So once we are attuned to this understanding, when we look at what happens in the material realm, we start to reflect on how this impacts the soul. Okay? We look at materialism, a materialistic life, and then we start to think to ourselves, how does this impact the soul? We think about a life of spirituality and we ask ourselves, how does this impact the soul? And what we will find is a very strong correlation between how the soul is affected and what we have been told about the hereafter. And like I said, that is because some of our ulama believe that actually the hereafter is a manifestation of what is happening within the soul. The soul is that thing which animates the body. It is everything other than your physical body. Your mind, your emotions, your characteristics, these are all part of your soul. What is happening within, that is what your soul is. And so, fundamentally for a Muslim to navigate through their context, and we're talking about the meta-modern, to navigate through the meta-modern, the hereafter has to be a key principle within our minds. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that human beings are distracted. And so He has made many, many efforts to educate us about the dual nature of the material world. We are here in the material world for a purpose. But the material world has an aspect to it that might confuse us. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد. He says that know that the life of this world is but an amusement. La'ibun. La'ibun is like a play. It's like a game. Okay? Walahun. Lahun is like something that doesn't really have an end or purpose. It's goalless. Okay? Wazinatun. And things look better than they are. Yeah, things look nice, but they're better than they are. وَتَفَاخَرٌ بَيْنَكُمْ. And competing with each other. Competing with the Joneses. Because X and Y has got X car, I'm not, fully a human being until I also have X car. Until I live in X neighborhood. Until I wear X clothes. Until I have X watch. Okay? Or maybe not just material things, until I become a doctor or a solicitor or another type of profession. Why don't you become like X person? Look how successful they are. And so on and so forth. This type of thought. It's continual kind of comparison. Even within families. Your elder brother is like this, or your sister is so good like that. Why don't you be like them? Why don't you be like them? Right? Continual comparison. Tafakhurun between each other. I'm better, you're better, I'm better, you're better. Okay? وَتَكَاثُرٌ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ, and seeking more and more wealth and children. I.e. here meaning family and support and all of those kind of things. This is the summation of the dangerous and pointless part of this world. It is not that there are not bounties and benefits within wealth, within children, within reputation, within families. Of course, there are bounties, but when we lose sight of their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we lose that vertical connection between what we have and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it becomes pointless. It becomes a goal in and of itself, and that's why it's pointless. Because the world is a transient place. It is a place here today and gone tomorrow. And that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues this ayah. Okay? So he continues this ayah with a parable. He says, كَمَثَلِ غَيْثٍ أَعْجَبَ الْكُفَّارَ نَبَاتُهُ ثُمَّ يَهِيجُ فَتَرَاهُ مُصْفَرًّا ثُمَّ يَكُونُ حُطَامًا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرِضْوَانٌ وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. So the translation of this is like the example of rain, whose resulting plant growth pleases the tillers. Okay, so the example of the world is like when you have rain and then all the crops grow nicely. Now, of course, if you're a farmer, you become very, very happy because you've planted the seeds, the rain has come, look at your crop, it's very, very beautiful. But there's just one thing, one problem with this crop, and that is that it looks very beautiful, but it doesn't last. Okay? So Allah continues in the ayah, then it dries. Okay, so you see these beautiful fields, but then with the passage of time, because we live in a world where things are refreshed and then destroyed and corrupted, that beautiful looking field becomes dry and you see it turn yellow. Then it becomes scattered debris, because once those plants die, they scatter in the wind. That is the example of the world that we live in. It is a transient world. So when we try and attain those things in and of themselves, it becomes pointless. Because in and of themselves, they don't have value. They have value in how you use them. And if you use them in the appropriate manner. But if they are goals in and of themselves, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Sometimes they can become goals in and of themselves. Sometimes our intention is to go and earn a halal rizq. And while we're earning a halal rizq, the intention starts to morph into, I need this and I need that and I don't have enough of this and I don't have enough of that. And before you know it, your mind cannot make that connection anymore between your purpose of why you went to do it, start earning in the first place, and what you're doing at the moment. But the transient nature of the world, if that is something that is clear in your mind, something that is you're aware of, then this helps to re-moderate and realign. And I want to say here that it is important to deal with these topics with wisdom. Many times what we have seen in our mystical tradition is that extremes are taken. So because wealth generation is looked at in a negative sense, people will run the direct opposite way. And they will move towards a kind of lack and a kind of, if you like, insufficient movement towards what they need to do to fulfill their needs in the correct and appropriate way. So for example, in the mystical tradition, there were many, many Sufis who abandoned everything and went out just in their clothes and decided to live through begging. Okay? This kind of attitude, you can see how it comes about. The dangers of earning and all of these things, you can see how it comes about. But this is not the path that we have been encouraged to take in the balanced and moderate way of Islam. So this all falls within the realm of wisdom. When I talk about the pitfalls of the nature of the earth, I remember there's a beautiful hadith that rebalances all of this for me, which is ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah. The dunya, or the world, is the farmland of the akhirah. Meaning that which you do in the dunya is like planting seeds. Okay? You're earning wealth to look after your family, to for example, fulfill your own needs, to help in charity. These are all like seeds that you plant. And it is through that way that you are able to progress and develop. But that should also not confuse us to the transient nature of all of that we face. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this same ayah then juxtaposes the nature of the world in it being play and amusement and, competing and all of that, and its transient nature to the akhirah. He says, and in the hereafter, the stakes are massive. So he says, and in the hereafter is severe punishment. Okay? Not just punishment, severe punishment. The stake is very high. Okay? And what else? On the other side, and forgiveness from Allah and approval. Okay? So you're either going to get one or the other. And what is the worldly life except for enjoyment of delusion? So you can see here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is educating us. And there are other ayat as well, which are very important to take and to think about deeply. What I notice is that many times, even with myself, when it comes to reading the Holy Quran, we read, and then read more. But very rarely do we pause. Very rarely do we take an example like this. This is a parable. You don't need an advanced tafsir to explain a parable. Parable is something that's supposed to be digestible to all. You have here in this ayah all of the categorizations of what the dunya is. It's la'ib, it's lahu, yeah? It's competing with each other, right? We can think through all of these things. And sometimes what you will find is that thinking through an ayah will help you appreciate the miraculous nature of this holy book. Because in very small passages, it explains a lot. And this is actually what is meant by the miraculous nature of the Holy Quran. Many of the scholars, when they came to discuss this, they talked about how the Quran is a literary masterpiece. In what aspect is it a literary masterpiece? It is a literary masterpiece because within a very small amount of words, it contains a very deep and impactful meaning. Okay? If someone was to truly take the verse that we spoke about right now and really deep this verse, it will change our whole attitude to many things. It will open our eyes that when we look at certain things in the world, we will be able to categorize that this is the hayat of the dunya that is not praised. We will look at the world as a world of transience. We will be able to cope with difficulties because we understand the nature of that transience. And we will understand the stakes that we face. And this is just one example. There are many, many. The more and more you practice, or one practices, reflecting on the Holy Quran, the more and more we realize that it is like having a relationship. Like when you have a relationship with someone and you talk to them more, you start to learn more about their personality. You hear and you have jokes and you have nice times because you've spent more time with them. Whereas conversely, if you don't spend time with someone, there is no time to develop that connection. There is no time to see that person in different states. Okay? The similar thing is with the Holy Quran. If our interaction with the Holy Quran is salam kudafis, yeah, or salam and a practice rote conversation, how are you, alhamdulillah, how are you, alhamdulillah, If this is our interaction with the Holy Quran, then that will be our relationship with the Holy Quran. Open the Holy Quran with curiosity. Open the Holy Quran because it has an answer for you. It has something that it wants to tell you. And it wants to tell you. Many people will have experienced this. Sometimes when you're going through something, you open the Quran and it falls on a verse that you say, SubhanAllah, I think the Quran is actually speaking to me. And this is something across the board. Many people will say they've experienced this at points in their life. Of course, right? So the thing is that if you can feel this intuitively just opening up, then it has something to say to you. It is Allah's communication. Okay? So another thing that the Holy Quran tells us then, in the line of how the world, trying to educate us about the nature of the world, is to also educate us about the nature of our stay in the world. So we know the world is a passing world, but what about us? We are also a traveler in this world. We are in a transient world as a being that is here for a short time. Yeah? It is like a temporary accommodation that goes up, and you book 2 nights in a temporary accommodation. The accommodation itself is going, and you are going for 2 nights. So it makes no sense, as we say, to pack the kitchen sink. Right? You are going just for 2 days. You don't need to pack a year's worth of clothes. Okay? So Allah educates us about the nature of our stay. What does He say? He says in the Holy Quran, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul will taste death. This have no doubt about. You've seen it, you know it. Every soul will face death. So what? If every soul will face death, وَإِنَّمَا تُوَفُّونَ أُجُورَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. So if every soul will taste death, then you will be given your recompense, your full recompense, on the Day of Judgment. So you know why you're here. You're going to spend 2 days here. You're going to die. And at that point, you will be given your reward on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So obviously, what do you have to work for? The 2 days that you're here, you have to work for this. Allah explains further. فَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ فَقَدْ فَازَ. So whoever is drawn away from the fire and is admitted in the paradise has attained success. Very simple, straightforward, clear. You want to know what it's all about? 2 ayat. One telling you about the nature of the world, one telling you what you're doing. You're going to die. You'll be given your reward. If you're saved from the fire and you enter heaven, well done. You've done it. Allah doesn't stop there. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. And the life of this world is nothing except for the enjoyment of delusion. It is a delusion. When you go and compare yourself to other people living materially beautiful lives, and you say, why does X person have this and why does X person have that? That is a delusion. That is not where real success is. It's an enjoyment of this life. Yes, of course, it's a bounty of this life. Yes. But it is not the main thrust of why you're here. And it is not that they will have this now forever and ever and you will be left behind forever and ever. No. You're here for a day or two. Every soul will face death. And we don't know when. Today, tomorrow, the day after, we don't know when. Inshallah, may Allah grant us long and beautiful lives. But at the end of the day, the whole purpose is explained. Like I said to you, going into the Quran, looking at an ayah like this, everything's explained clearly. Short sentences, short powerful sentences, explaining to you exactly what will happen. So the world is designed to be transient. It's designed to be transient so that we don't get confused by it. We don't look at it as a state of something permanent, and thereby we do not get confused in our own transience. But what we find is that many people don't get this very simple, straightforward message. They look at the world and they believe it is here forever. and they look at themselves and they cannot see the end. And so they feel like they are also going to be here forever. And this duality is something that is seen again in the history of Karbala. As you know, Umar bin Sa'ad, one of the reasons, or the reason for why he agreed to fight against Imam al-Hussein, was the governorship of Ray. When we look at it in history, we think, how can somebody be this deluded? He never received the governorship of Ray. But for the sake of a few years of potential enjoyment, of potential material abundance, he was willing to commit the most heinous crimes. So when we look at the history of Karbala, this is something that we see as the human condition. Many are confused by this. But as a mu'min, as somebody on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is something that we should something that we should understand. And conversely, this is exactly what we see in the camp of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. In Imam al-Hussein's letter to Muhammad ibn Hanafiya before leaving Karbala, he says, the world is like a dream. Mata' al-ghurur, it's like a dream. And the hereafter is the permanent abode. Very clear understanding of the situation. So choose the permanent over the temporary. You have on the scales permanent and you have transient. It makes sense for anybody in their right mind who believes in the truth of the hereafter that they would certainly pick the permanent. On the night of Ashura, some of the sources explain that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam told his companions, I know of no companions more loyal than mine, and no family more caring than my family. However, I release you of your oath to me. This darkness will cover you, use it and leave. For these people want only me. Now when they refused to abandon him, he is reported to have said, tomorrow we will meet death. But death in humiliation, but death is better than humiliation, and humiliation is better than the fire. Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum. Today, inshallah, for our musibah, we're going to talk about the arrival of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. Diverted from his pathway to Kufa by Hur's detachment, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam reached a barren plain. He stopped and he looked around. The Euphrates flowed nearby, but the air was dry with dread. Dust clung to the sandals of his companions. The sun pressed heavily upon their backs. The horses grew restless. Then Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam asked, what is the name of this place? They said, Karbala. Perhaps Imam al-Hussein's eyes filled with tears as he recalled the prophecies of what would happen to his loved ones around him. In many accounts, he splits the word Karbala into two parts, Karb wa Bala. Karb meaning the place of grief, and Bala meaning trial. He ordered the tents to be pitched. The family began to descend from the camels. The children looked around. There were no walls, no water, no welcome. But the ground, oh, the ground was thirsty, awaiting for the inevitable sorrow it was to witness. The angels watched in silence. The Euphrates wept. The ground that had once been dry was now heavy with fate. He had heard the prophecy from the lips of his grandfather. He had seen the soil in the hand of Salama, and he had dreamt of this day at the grave of the Prophet. O listeners, imagine the sorrow of that realization. To look at a piece of earth and to know it is your grave. To watch your children play in the dust and know that this dust will soon drink your blood. To hear the neigh of your horse and know that it will return riderless. This was the weight of Karbala, and still the Imam was not afraid. This was not a battlefield. It was a place of slaughter, where the Imam fought for his life and his families and companions tried to defend him. A place where prophecy came alive, a place where dreams turned into dust, a place where heaven touched earth, and the weight of history fell upon the caravan. After a few days, access to water was cut off, and the camp of the Imam had to make do with what they had and a couple of breakthroughs of the siege. Water was scarce as the battle grew closer. The Imam asked for respite for one more night so that he could pray and recite the Quran. O lovers of Hussein, let's not treat Karbala as a place just in history. It is a land where our hearts must dwell. It is a ground upon which our souls must walk. For as long as Karbala is remembered, the truth will never die. As long as we gather and weep, the memory of Hussein will live. And we say, we were not there when you entered Karbala, O Hussein, but we carry the dust of that land in our tears. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. صلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام على الشفاء الضابلة. السلام على النفوس المصطلمة. السلام على الجسد العاريات. Peace be upon the dried and withered lips. Peace be upon the souls that were plundered and oppressed. Peace be upon the uncovered bodies that laid in the sands of Karbala. Ya Hussein, Ya Aba Abdullah. Ya Hussein, Ya Aba Abdullah. O lovers of Hussein, tonight we speak of a man, not of youth, but of age and honor. not of silence, but of loyalty and thunder. Tonight we remember Habib ibn Mazahir al-Asadi, a man who was raised in the lap of Islam, a companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a man whose childhood was spent hearing the footsteps of Rasulullah, who drank from the spring of courage and whose sword never trembled in battle. He was in Kufa when the news came, Hussein has left Medina, Hussein is on the move, Hussein is alone. And Kufa, the city of betrayal, the city that once wrote thousands of letters, had now been sealed by Ibn Ziyad's tyranny. The same city where Muslim Ibn Aqil's blood still stained the streets. Habib heard what happened to Muslim and he began to cry, and he screamed, Ya Hussein, we failed you once, we will not fail you again. Despite the spies, despite the danger, he waited for a message from Hussein. Then one night, in his old age, he received a letter written with the tears of the family of Rasulullah. من الحسين ابن علي إلا الرجل الفقيه الحبيب ابن مظاهر. From Hussein ibn Ali to the honorable scholar, the wise Habib ibn Mazahir, قد علمت قربانا من رسول الله، فإذا أحببت نصرتنا فلا تتخار. You know us well, you know our position, you know our rights. Come to us before it is too late. Habib kissed the letter and started to cry, and without hesitation he told his servant, take my horse and wait for me outside the gates of Kufa. I will slip out in the dead of the night. He left his home and never returned. An old man mounting his steed, riding alone from the city of betrayal to the land of sacrifice. And when he reached Karbala, he saw the tents of the Ahl al-Bayt. The tents on the night of Ashura were buzzing from the sound of recitation and Quran. He saw Ali Akbar, he saw Qasim, he saw Abbas, and when his eyes fell upon Hussein, he he fell off his horse. He dismounted his horse and kissed the feet of his master. Hussein lifted him, embraced him and said, Habib, you came. You honored our house once again. Habib became the commander of the left wing of Hussein's army. He led prayers, he gave courage to the youth, and he recited poetry under the stars. Ala wallahi law qut'tumuni إربان إربا ما تركت ابن فاطمة وحدها. By Allah, even if you cut me into pieces, I would never leave the son of Fatima alone. Even if I am cut into pieces and burnt and my ashes scattered, I would still rise to defend you, O son of Fatima. And then the day came of Ashura, the day when heaven and earth wept together. Habib fought like Ali in Khaybar, an old man, but every strike he took shook the enemies of Allah. He killed dozens until they surrounded him. At that moment, spears, swords, arrows from all directions attacked the body of Habib. He fell to the ground, his turban stained with blood, and cried out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Hussein ran to him. He lifted his head and placed it in his lap. Habib, you stayed loyal till the end. And then he began to cry. They say that Imam Hussein cried like he wept for Ali Akbar, because Habib was not just a soldier, he was a friend, a companion, a believer who never turned away. And tonight we remember this old blessed man who taught us that age is no excuse, that even when the world betrays the few, the loyal will always answer the call of Hussein. Labbaik ya Hussein, labbaik ya Hussein, labbaik ya Hussein. Matem Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
یا حسین حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے ماموں پہ فدا ہو گئے زینب کے دلارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے سمجھاتی تھیں بچوں کو بڑے پیار سے زینب سمجھاتی تھیں بچوں کو بڑے پیار سے زینب بھولے سے نہ جانا کبھی دریا کے کنارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے پیاسی ہے سکینہ رہے ہر آن یہی دھیان پیاسی ہے سکینہ رہے ہر آن یہی دھیان پانی کا تصور نہ ہو ذہنوں میں تمہارے حق کر گئے در کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے گھوڑوں سے گرو بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ دینا گھوڑوں سے گرو بھی تو صدا رن سے نہ دینا دیکھو میں خفا ہوں گی جو ماموں کو پکارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے پالا تھا جنہیں گود میں وہ جا بس رن میں پالا تھا جنہیں گود میں وہ جا بس رن میں اب کون ہے زینب کو جو ماں کہہ کے پکارے حق کر گئے مادر سے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے وعدہ جو کیا ماں سے وفا کر گئے دونوں ماں سے وفا کر گئے دونوں پیاسے ہی لڑے پیاسے ہی دنیا سے صدارے حق کر گئے مادر کے ادا سارے کے سارے حق کر گئے کے ادا سارے کے سارے
Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازار، گھر سے باہر بھی نہ آنے والی، گھر سے باہر بھی نہ آنے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں، جس نے بابا سے چرائے تھے کئی بار اسیر، جس نے بابا سے چرائے تھے کئی بار اسیر، قیدی آزاد کرانے والی، قیدی آزاد کرانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، جلتے خیموں سے اٹھا لائی عباس کے بعد، جلتے خیموں سے اٹھا لائی عباس کے بعد، علی عابد کو بچانے والی، علی عابد کو بچانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، دین کی خاطر یہ بی بی سالار بنی، دین کی خاطر یہ بی بی سالار بنی، بن کے عباس دکھانے والی، بن کے عباس دکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا آئی بازاروں میں زینب، اپنے سینے پہ سکینہ کو زندانوں میں، اپنے سینے پہ سکینہ کو زندانوں میں، بادھ بھائی کے سلانے والی، بادھ بھائی کے سلانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، پردہ دنیا کو سکھانے والی آئی بازاروں میں زینب، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله.
The season of the companions. Zainab al-Kubra asked her brother Hussein about the steadfastness of his companions and his reliance on them. Nafi, son of Hilal, happened to hear this from behind their tent. Hussein told his sister that there would be no companions more loyal than his throughout all of time, from the beginning of creation until the end of Judgment Day. They have broadened their breasts and gazed towards death through the corners of their eyes. A ruckus from the outside interrupted their discussion. Hussein went outside and returned to his sister and said, "These people are my companions, and Habib, son of Zoheir, is the champion amongst them. They have come to pledge allegiance to you and tell you that they will protect the sanctuary of the Messenger of God as long as they are alive. What should I tell them?" Zainab al-Kubra said, "Tell them that Zainab is supplicating for you and wishing you blessings from God, and that you are neighbors to the Messenger in the hereafter." It was as if the daughter of Fatima az-Zahra
شاه بنشسته بر او حلقه یاران الست، پیرهن چاک و غزل خوان و صراحی در دست، 4 تکبیر زده یک سره بر هر چه که هست. خیمه در خیمه صدای سخن قرآن است، امشبی را شهدین در حرمش مهمان است.